Hey and welcome to the Underground. I'm the Pied Piper and this is the second episode. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to use VirtualBox and how to set up Backtrack Linux within VirtualBox. Now, there's going to be two things you need to download, VirtualBox and Backtrack Linux, but before we do this, I'm just going to give you a little crash course on virtual machines. Now, virtual machines are just operating systems that can run on top of another operating system, Windows, etc., etc., Linux. So you can run two operating systems or more simultaneously, and this is very cost effective as you don't need to set up another computer, or it's a lot easier and quicker. This couldn't be done before because of the technology restrictions, but now since we've got like really fast processor and heaps of RAM in our computers, it makes it a lot easier and to virtualize stuff. So I'm going to be using VirtualBox, but there are other products such as VMware Player, and VMware Workstation, which is a commercial product, but I prefer VirtualBox because it is free. It's open source and runs across all platforms, whereas Virtual Workstation isn't free. I think it's $100 or $200 for that piece of software. But you can use any virtual machine software you choose, but I'm going to primarily use VirtualBox because it is free, and that makes it easier for everyone else than saying, hey, you have to fork up $100 to $200 for software. So what you want to do is navigate to www.virtualbox.org and go to the downloads link, and then you'll be prompted here. We want to select the VirtualBox version for your platform. So if you're running macOS, you would have to select OS X, obviously. So just select your operating system, download that file. It's about 80 megabytes. I'm not going to install it because I've already got it installed on my computer, but just run it. Follow the prompts, agree, next, and make sure you install everything that pops up. It'll probably pop up for network devices and drivers and that sort of thing. So make sure you've installed everything there. So once you've got that installed, we want to go to the Backtrack Linux website, which is www.backtrack-linux.org. Now, Backtrack is a penetration testing distro, quote. So it's pretty much a Linux distro full of all the pretty much hacking tools that you can get on Linux. It's really great. I love it. And it makes things a lot easier than having to grab the source files and then compile them, and then on top of that install it. So it's just an all-in-one package for hacking, and that's its only and primary use. So I recommend you watch this cool video just to get a little feel of what Backtrack is, and to download it, just go up to downloads. Now you can register to download, or you can just download. I'm just going to click download for the sake of this video, but if you want to register, you can. Now you want to select the release. Backtrack 5.1 is the most latest, so you probably want to select that, and then you want to select the graphical interface flavor. Now in Linux, there's different graphical interface flavors that come. So Gnome, you sort of have this top bar at the top, and I guess you could say it's like macOS. Yeah, it's similar to macOS X, and KDE is more like Windows. So go Google them and see what you like. I might be able to bring up some images and show you the different look of these interfaces here. and my internet's not being great today. So here's a picture of the Gnome Interface. So if you like that kind of thing, there's the Gnome Interface there. I'll try and find one of the KDE one. So here's some other screenshots of the interface. Surely I can find a Gnome one. This one might be it. And here's the KDE interface. So as you can see, it's very, very similar to Windows. So you start and you have your application icons here, and you've got your active Windows access here, and you've got your notifications and your time over here. So it's very similar to Windows. So select the one you prefer using, or I'm going to be using Gnome, so that might be better. So if you don't want the hassle, select Gnome. But if you want something similar to Windows, and maybe you'll find that easier, select KDE. And then you want to select your architecture. So if you go to 64-bit PC, obviously select 64, but if you only got 32-bit, like me, select 32. And in image, you select the ISO file, and you can select the download type. You can have the direct download link or the torrent. I'm not going to download it. It's about 2 gigabytes, so it's going to take a little bit of time. So once you've done that, continue on with this tutorial. So what you want to do once you're finished downloading, just launch VirtualBox, which should be on your desktop. If not, go Start All Programs and scroll down to and find it here, VM VirtualBox, and here we go. So once you've got that selected, iTunes is really annoying me today. Alright, so once you've got it up, you want to create a new virtual machine, so we click this new icon at the top, and we'll be prompted with this wizard which we just walked through. So we want to go next. Call it Backtrack, obviously, because that's what we're doing. You want to select Linux, and you can select whatever Linux operating system you want to select, because they don't have Backtrack there. I'm going to select Ubuntu because it is based on Ubuntu, so I'm going to go and select Ubuntu. But if you find an icon you prefer, you can use that too. It won't really affect anything. So go next. You can set the RAM, so if you've got 4 gigabytes, you can give it even 2 gigabytes of RAM. The more RAM you give it, the less your host will have, and the less stable it will be. So I'm going to give it a decent 1 gig. You probably should give it more than 500 megabytes if you can. Another thing I should mention is you shouldn't run this on an old PC or netbook, because it won't work. Your computer requires a modern computer to run a operating system on top of an operating system. So I'm going to give it a decent 1 gigabyte of RAM. If you've got a 64-bit PC and you've got 6 or 8 gig of RAM, you can give it more. You can even go as far as giving it 4 gigabytes of RAM. So the more RAM you give it, the faster it will operate. So I'm going to go next, and you'll be prompted for the virtual hard disk. You want to create a startup hard disk and create a new hard disk. So click next, and you just want to leave this as default. And here we can select whether we want it to be dynamic or a fixed size. Now dynamic expands as you fill it up more, and it uses less space. But a fixed size one has better performance, but it doesn't expand on itself. So choose the one you want. I'm going to select dynamic, and I'm going to just give it a generous 13 gigabytes. It should be fine with the default 8 gigabytes. It's up to you if you got space to give. be generous. So click next, and you'll just get a summary of all your settings and that sort of thing. Just click create and create. Alright, so once you've created your virtual machine, we want to access the settings panel for that virtual machine. And we can see we've got several options here. We want to go down to system and check everything's okay. In the processor tab, if you've got a quad core, you can give it more CPUs, more cores for that virtual machine to use, but I've only got a dual core, so I'm gonna give it one core, and the other cores for Windows 7. Display, you can bump this up or just leave it as default. I'm gonna bump it up because I've got a decent graphics card, and storage should be fine, audio should be fine. Network, if you've got a router and you've got multiple computers on your network, you can select bridged adapter, but if you've got a direct connection to the internet, you can select NAT. But I prefer bridged adapter because you can talk to all the computers, even the host computer, with your virtual machine, and it will get a unique IP, just as if there was a computer connected to the network. So bridged adapter is the best option, and you select your device that you're using. So if you've got an Ethernet, you'd obviously select the Ethernet or the wireless. But if you don't have that, just stick with the default NAT, but bridged adapter is probably the best option there. Now all these settings should be fine and everything's set up properly. So just click OK, and then once we've done that, we want to start our virtual machine. Click OK to the prompts, and we want to go through this first run wizard. So click next. We want to select our image that we just downloaded, so Backtrack 5R1. Select that file, click next, start. And this will begin to boot our disk just as if we were to burn it to a disk and boot from the CD. So you may be prompted with this, just press enter and it will go ahead. Click enter, and you can see it's pretty fast. So just press OK to all the prompts. You can read them if you want. You probably should if this is the first time you use VirtualBox. So we'll start to begin to load that. Alright, another prompt, just press OK to all of them. And it may take a bit of time because this isn't installed, it's running from an ISO file. So just give that a minute, and there we go, it's loaded. So it'll prompt you with this, and it will say to start graphical interface, type start X, and that's what we want to do. So we want to type start X, STARTX, and that will start the graphical interface. Press enter. Alright, so we're up and running now, and now we want to install Backtrack. But before we do that, I'm just going to give you a little walkthrough through the Gnome Interface and Backtrack. So, unlike Windows, we can access our applications through the application menu, and this is sorted by categories. There's not much here. As I said, this is solely created for penetration testing or hacking. So there's not very many things. Like if you were to install Ubuntu, you'd get a lot more consumer-friendly applications. But what this does have is a lot of stuff. So if we go into the Backtrack directory, we can see that we've got different categories. These are sorted in the process that you would do a penetration test. So first off, we'd get information, then we'd do a vulnerability assessment, an exploitation, we'd exploit the machine, we'd privilege, escalate, and you may not know what most of these things are, but you'll begin to understand and get an idea on how it all works and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of tools in here. As you can see, there's tons and tons and hundreds of tools that we can use. I won't be covering everything because it will be impossible. I'll just be covering the most common and popular tools that exist on Backtrack. So there you go, there's a little walkthrough on the application Backtrack menu. In places we can access our files, we can connect to a server and that sort of thing. We can browse our files here, just like we would in Windows. It's pretty similar, except we have this kind of menu here. So close that off, and we have system. We can change the preferences and that sort of thing. Here we can launch the console. We'll do that in the next tutorial. I'll teach you how to do all that sort of stuff. So we have our log off and our shutdown options here. We have our time and we have our log off options here. We have notifications here. So that's basically a short crash course on Backtrack. So what we want to do is install our Backtrack to our virtual machine. So double click it and just give it a sec to boot up. Alright, so select your language. I'm going to select English, forward. So most of the things in this setup should be default. It's going to grab the time off the internet. Alright, and hopefully it did that successfully and it can guess what time zone you're in and what location you're in. So if it doesn't do that, you're going to have to manually select it yourself. So click forward and select your keyboard layout. So most of the stuff here, as I said, you can leave as default. And we want to erase the entire disk, so click forward. It will just erase the virtual box hard disk image. And you'll just get a summary of that sort of thing. Just click install, and it'll go ahead and install Backtrack. I'll come back when it's finished. So once Backtrack is finished installing on your virtual machine, you can just click continue testing and give it a sec and close it off. And just power off machine. You don't really need to shut it down. I suppose I'll show shut it down. And we'll click shut down. And oh. And just give it a sec. Alright, and press enter. And it'll close off by itself, so when the virtual machine shuts down, so does the window hosting the virtual machine. So there we go. That's it for today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and in the next tutorial I'm going to show you some command interfaces and how to use Backtrack a little bit. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.